The Atari Jaguar, marketed as one of the very first 64-bit consoles, suffered a financial loss before the fall of the Atari company we all knew and loved in our youths. The Jaguar is no stranger to criticism and scrutiny, yet its ill fate has not stopped fans and fanatics from keeping the console alive through the homebrew scene. New games are being made to this day for the Atari Jaguar, and almost anybody can hop into the homebrew scene with RB Plus and Jag Studios. Whether you're a fan or not, you can't hear about the homebrew scene for the Jag without at least hearing about a homebrew company named Wave 1 Games. I am Kaz Danazon, and today we're going to take a long, in-depth look at Wave 1 Games. Love them or hate them, the company solely ran by one man, Jeffrey Johnson, has dedicated the past 4 years to making homebrew games for the Atari Jaguar. Some considered absolute flops, others considered absolute atrocities within the Jaguar communities. But why does Wave 1 Games get so much guff? Well, as admitted by Jeffrey himself, some games were made when he had very little knowledge of the process before truly honing his skills as a Jaguar developer.
I just wasn't. I wasn't that good yet, and I didn't know how to do a lot of things that I wanted to do.
Right.
However, let's not be so critical right now, as everyone starts somewhere. Due to the sensitive nature of Wave 1 Games' reputation within the Jaguar community, I would like to start this video by stating that the overall presentation of this video is marketed solely on my research, experiences, and opinions regarding the company, the products, and social interactions over the last few months. Wave 1 Games gets a lot of hate and distaste, but their works are not without merit, as Wave 1 Games does count as an official homebrew company for the Jaguar community. Admittedly, Wave 1 Games cannot be compared to others such as Reboot, Orion, BitJag, and Sporadic Soft, as Wave 1 Games holds itself differently than any other companies and also offers its own style of development. As a member of the Jaguar community for only 10 months, I'd like to state the fact that I do not know everything that there is to know about the Jaguar, and am learning new things every day. With that in mind, let's go ahead and jump into it, and let's take a look at some of the games made by Wave 1 Games and see how development over the years has improved. Beginning with worst to best, this here is an informational look at Wave 1 Games. Wave 1 Games is owned and operated by Jeffrey Johnson out of Charlotte, North Carolina, with the aid of Lorena Muniz for the box art graphics and manuals. Together, they provide a genuine service with an authentic Atari Jaguar feel. As stated in an interview with the Turbo Duo, Jeffrey has been into the homebrew scene and game development scene for quite some time and has worked on personal projects for PC, Sega Genesis, and Jaguar, stating that programming for the Jag, although slightly different, is similar to that of the Sega Genesis, and stating that his inspiration comes from games such as Donkey Kong, House of the Dead, and various other sources. From the beginning, Jeffrey has enjoyed the Atari Jaguar like many fans before him, and this made it no soft pick when it came to developing for one of his favorite consoles. So what types of games are offered by Wave 1 Games? Well, let's start at the beginning with his very first game for the Jaguar, Fast Food 64, which is a remake of the classic Atari 2600 game Fast Food, released in 1982. At Wave 1 Games, you get two versions of the remake with both Fast Food 64 and Fast Food 64 Holiday Snacks. The objective of the game is simple enough, as you play as a generic 3D mouth that gobbles up food to build the most points. These two games aim to stand out, as Fast Food 64 has both a traditional side-scrolling concept, a classic mode to pay homage to the original 2600 game, and a first-person VR mode with relatively reasonable graphics. In the holiday version, you have a Fallen Cookies mode, holiday-themed mode, and a traditional arcade mode. There are also some new features such as an option to change your characters, with each one varying in size, speed, and design, and this can either make the game easier or more challenging. Also, there are now power-ups that assist you in the game. There is also a PC version released as of 2020 with updated graphics in the VR mode. Due to the limitations of the Atari Jaguar, this is by far a more superior version of the game. Regardless of the style and graphics of the game, it has proven to be the love child of Jeffrey, as he has updated the game to near perfection. There are, however, as stated by himself, some graphical issues, but nothing that is necessarily game-breaking. The game has been fixed from crashes and major glitches, sound is decent, and controls are very well executed. One of the best early games released for Wave 1 Games was a game known as Ants, which was a simple arcade game where you smush ants and make it into the high scores. Sadly, the game does not actually record the high scores, but offers a light gun feature which was the first of its kind, seeing as the Atari Jaguar didn't actually come with a light gun. In this mode, you use a finger gun simulating a shotgun, and you unload heavy weaponry onto the ants, even unlocking the Antzilla boss and Zillasketo boss along the way. Albeit not one of my personal favorites, it is still a decent game for the homebrew enthusiast. Following the footsteps of revamped 2600 games, you get Frogz 64, which features some interesting elements that even Jeffrey himself states is god-awful. Frogz 64 was a personal project that attempted to shed some light on an already classic title known as Frogger, released in 1981. Frogz 64 has been criticized, scrutinized, and torn apart by the Jag communities for being riddled with bugs, game crashes, unplayable modes, and terrible graphics. Luckily, thanks to the diligence of Wave 1 Games and Jeffrey's attempts to supply what the critics want, he has updated a lot of the flaws with the game since its release almost 3 years ago, even making a holiday version as well. Although not entirely redeemable, but fascinating, one of the most noticeable and honorable moments of Frogz 64 is that it does feature an Atari Karts themed level, which, Atari Karts, was one of the most sought after games on the Atari Jaguar, next to Battlesphere, Rayman, Braindead 13, and Aircars. More on this later, as Wave 1 Games also offers a reasonably priced copy of Aircars. One of the biggest reasons for why I'm currently mentioning Jeffrey's older games is because it is important to address where one has started and how far one has come, even if it means one has to take a break from previous projects to focus on others. Which brings me to Aircars and Thea Fighters. To begin with, Aircars and Thea Fighters are not a creation of Wave 1 Games, and Jeffrey Johnson seeks no pleasure in claiming them to be his games. He only boasts that his version of Aircars is the updated version planned for the original release that would have been sent into the ESRB, and takes the kind consideration to keep his copy at a low rate for the Jaguar enthusiast, because Aircars is an exceptionally rare game that has sold for as high as $700 on eBay alone. In Aircars, you play as an air combat pilot whose objective is to combat against the Eboners in a first-person shooter fashion. Aircars was one of the last games ever released for the Atari Jaguar, without the exception of telegames, and received an incredibly limited release with only a few hundred copies available, making it one of the top 5 rarest games on the Jaguar. It also happens to be the first and last completed game by Midnight Studios. Thea Fighters, on the other hand, was never completed and has an interesting history that will have to be discussed in another video. Wave 1 Games does offer a box copy of the prototype on a limited license, and although it is not complete, it is indeed playable with up to only 2 players. Touching back more on the light gun feature, however, found in the game Ants, Jeffrey would later implement this feature for his next 3 games, Saucer Wars, Jag Zombies, and Jag Zombies 2. We'll take a quick look into Saucer Wars and then jump straight into Jag Zombies, as this will be the main focus for the remainder of this video. Saucer Wars is by far one of the simplest games of Jeffrey's recent developments, as it features a unique arcade element to the Atari Jaguar. It is a light gun shooter that even comes with a rich storyline and comic book written and drawn by Jason Green. In this game, you play as a scientist named Milo Marslander, guiding a turret laser in an attempt to save the world from an invading alien army hell-bent on abducting humans. The game excels visually, no matter how simple, and it offers a fast-paced gameplay that leaves room for a decent challenge. In fact, Retro Video Gamer gave it a 6 out of 10 review for being an exceptional homebrew with 6 out of 10 for graphics, 6 out of 10 for gameplay, and 7 out of 10 for sound and effect. Admittedly, Saucer Wars has seen mixed reviews from fans and critics alike, as a lot of people had a lot to say about the game since its release. Gameplay is simplistic, the goals of the game is obtainable, as each level takes about 3 minutes to complete, and overall, it acts as a game of survival from beginning to end. Speaking of survival, let's take a look at the main event, the game you all came here for, the first ever zombie game made for the Atari Jaguar. Jag Zombies. Where to begin? Jag Zombies' overall design was appealing, dark, gloomy, and unique to the Jaguar. The concepts and ideas were great, but later it would be found out that its execution was poor. Even Jeffrey himself admits that the game was bad, so much so that he would later take action and remove the game from Wave 1 Games' store and begin working on a remake of the game immediately. It comes as no surprise, as Jag Zombies was by far one of the most hyped and most let down games of all from Wave 1 Games. It was the first of its kind, and despite its constant revisions, faced a lot of backlash from YouTubers, testers, and community members upon its release, as the game was faulted for having terrible hit detection, awful audio, glitchy textures and sprites, pixelated graphics, slowdowns, constant crashing, the inability to save scores, short levels leading to the game's completion within 12 minutes, and the inability to load a new game without a crash. So right now you might be asking me, well, what's the point of even reviewing the game? Why even bring it up at all? Well, truth be told, Jag Zombies is honestly a pretty good game. Since its unfortunate failure, Jeffrey has remade the game, bundled it in with its sequel, Jag Zombies 2, and retitled the game as Jag Zombies Reloaded. Note: Before we go any further, I would like to mention that I have not had the pleasure of testing out the original release and will be using footage of other testers for comparison, using videos such as Second Opinion Games and Mastercast TV, from this point further, to compare it to my current copy of Jag Zombies, which has been recorded from an HDTV via the use of my Canon Rebel 7 due to some technical difficulties. The video has been modified to hide scan lines to the best of my ability, and color scale may not be on par with previously recorded footage. So what updates have been made to Jag Zombies and Reloaded? Well, for starters, let's take a look at the HUD in the original release. Compared to the original release, you now have an actual health bar located at the bottom left versus the red text in the top right corner. You will also notice that the shotgun shells are now located in the bottom right, overlaying a shotgun sprite that offers a simple animation. Albeit a bit nitpicky, some have complained that the shells vanishing after every shot instead of a steady animation flow is a bit of an oversight, yet I find this to be somewhat reaching for a problem that doesn't actually exist, as the animation is set to rebuff every time a shot is fired, meaning that it executes a single input code that triggers a specific response, which is set to repeat. In simple terms, if you reload this video, don't expect it to take you back to where you left off, as chances are it'll restart the video. This is the same with the shotgun input. You will also notice that the civilian counter has been replaced with a silhouette of Carl, a gentleman who runs past your screen often in the game. You will find some key interruptions like Carl and Susan, who are civilians that run past your screen, but try not to shoot them as they are not the enemy. However, remember to shoot the zombies that will appear in front of you at random. One other thing that we can address about the new version is that the sound is much better. Unless you've hooked your CRT television to some subwoofers, you should have no issues with explosions, screams, or gunshots berating your eardrums and assaulting the senses. Sound is pretty good, and even the music is relatively nice. One issue I am, however, faced with in the game is more of a personal gripe than an issue. There is a buffer delay upon reload, which takes exactly 1 second before a fire can be initiated. This is not actually a problem, as this adds to the challenge of the game as the zombies advance. Unfortunately, screen tearing still happens, but it's actually much better than before. The only time that I had an issue with screen tearing was at the warehouse level when sprites got too close to the barrels. I would later find that removing the barrels or shooting them fixes the screen tearing issue. I would also like to state that I've played through Jag Zombies at least 10 different times, and I have seen this problem every time I reach this level. The other time that I've seen screen tearing is with the final boss, which does drop in frame rate. This is expected with the Jaguar, as the Jaguar is no stranger to drop frame rates when too many objects are on the screen at one time. Examples like AVP, Cybermorph, iWar, and Iron Soldier come to mind. Another concern is sprite scaling. Examples like in the parking deck and graveyard level, you'll experience that some zombies will walk through a pillar or be smaller than the gravestones. Truth be told, this doesn't bother me as much because the game is engaging enough to make you enjoy it more than you think. It may seem imperfect, but at least hear me out through the rest of the video before you make any opinions. Some new positives to the improvements are that the pop-ins like the train, the direwolf, and the faux Batlord are all animated. The Batlord now walks in a frame instead of jumping out, and he even turns and attacks you. The direwolf at Skinwalker Ranch now deals damage and is more realistic and animated. More importantly, if you beat the game, run through the credits, and decide to start another game, whether it be Jag Zombies Reloaded or Jag Zombies 2, you will no longer have an issue with the game crashing. Level runtime is now roughly 4 to 6 minutes instead of the 17 to 60 seconds. It takes roughly 37 minutes to beat the first game and about the same time to beat the second game. There are now more ammo packs, med packs, environmental interferences, hit detection is better, and it gets even more better once you begin with Jag Zombies 2. Lastly, weapon switching is responsive and doesn't jam. 2-player co-op, which you've seen in the majority of this review, is fun and very well executed but has minimal issues. The issues that I have noticed is a slight slowdown and a few screen tearing. Is Jag Zombies Reloaded perfect? No, but it's a solid 8 out of 10 for me, and I say that truthfully with the fact that I see the improvements made in the attempt to truly offer the fans what they want. The game is fun, challenging, and well done. Care was placed into Jag Zombies Reloaded. Jag Zombies 2 is a bit of an upgrade from Jag Zombies 1 and is less predictable. The difficulty has been amped up from the original, adding a different flair to the game. I feel that I must give a warning to those watching the video, as this will be a full, detailed review involving my experiences with the game. Before I continue, please note that there may be some spoilers, and if you intend on buying this game, you have been warned. Jag Zombies 2 has new features not included in Jag Zombies 1, with new animations, obstacles, and new creatures. Among the new creatures and obstacles, you will encounter dogs, wall crawlers, spiders, runners, and a mutated crab monster from the likes of a nightmare. New obstacles are included too, with the return of Carl and Susan with their illegitimate child Earl and pet cow Betsy. The first thing you'll notice upon loading the game is that there is now a timer in the form of a TNT to tell you when the level is going to end. There are 7 levels in total in the game, and each one is comprised of 2 to 7 minutes, with level 7 being the shortest and level 2 being the absolute longest, if not the most foreboding. I'll get into this one later. You start the game with no warning as zombies begin charging towards you from the shadows, and thus showing you your first look at implied shadow graphics, meaning that some creatures show up before you can actually see them. I felt personally that this adds to the challenge of the game and also helps engage the focus of the player. You won't notice much of anything new in the first level aside from the parallax scrolling and the amped up amounts of zombies. This will be your first real chance to collect as many flamethrower power-ups as you can, and remember to grab those or you'll have hell to pay in levels 3, 5, 6, and 7. As you move on to level 2, known as Hotel Hell, you'll realize the level is specifically designed to fuck you. Hotel Hell is an endless hallway that is intended to, without exaggeration, make you feel like you're in hell. The level starts off with a purple spider with a human head for its dorsal, or its butt, depending on what you'd like to call it. But don't be fooled with this spider, however, as you can't actually hurt it until it's right at your foot. You'll even notice that the hallway has stopped, implying that you yourself have stopped in front of the spider. Unload your shotgun before he drains your life and continue on with the level. In this level, for the next minute or two, you'll encounter zombies and flaming demon heads, which honestly look pretty cool. You'll also notice that the zombies only come from the center of the hallway. This is important to remember later in the video. After about 2 minutes of onslaught, you'll see spiders climbing on the roof. Make sure that you time your shots accordingly, because once these spiders show up on the screen, if you don't kill them right away, they will drain your life, and it is an instant game over from there. Flamethrowers can't hurt them, neither can grenades. Aim directly for the center of each spider, and open fire. The next 4 minutes will feel like the longest, most annoying minutes as wall crawlers, zombies, and demon heads flood into the hallway. Line your shots up and take out the zombies on the wall ASAP. You cannot shoot them from a distance unless you're in 2-player mode. I'll consider this a glitch, but not a harmful one, as even in 1-player mode you can still kill them, but only when you're in range. Flamethrowers can't hurt them, but the shotgun and grenades can. You can alternate between weapons using the keypad, pressing 1 for shotgun, 2 for flamethrowers, and 3 for grenades. Roughly the same pattern will continue until the TNT fuse burns out, and then it's on to the next level. It's clear that a lot of time and thought went into the Hotel Hell level, and I would like to congratulate Wave 1 Games as this was honestly one of the best and hardest levels of all. Once you reach the end of level 2, you'll walk through some doors and into the next level. Here you'll find runners and dogs that pop up at random. Perspective is nice and the overall atmosphere is a bit calmer versus the previous level. Take a breath of fresh air because once you reach level 4, the difficulty will pick up yet again. If you wanted the perfect excuse to unleash that flamethrower, then level 3 is the perfect place to start. You'll notice that the burning zombies have an updated animation where they now burn into a pile of bones instead of just burning into a basic skeleton. This will also help out with the dogs as they show up randomly and can only be killed with headshots. Don't get too trigger happy, however, as you might encounter Carl, Susan, or Earl along the way. Remember, if you kill more than 2 civilians, then it's game over as well. That's right, the game criticizes you for inhumane carnage. I said that you'll only have 2 chances to mess up, but in reality, you only get 1 chance to mess up as you'll experience in level 4, Return to Skinwalker Ranch, where Betsy the cow sits in the middle of the screen like a dumbfounded suicide bomber. Hamburgers, anyone?
Can I shoot it?
No.
I killed it!
Seriously though, she doesn't move and you cannot avoid her. It is not a matter of if you'll shoot her, it is a matter of when you'll shoot her, as the game unintentionally forces you to take the L. Skinwalker Ranch is not a very long level, but it does throw a handful of things your way, and even offers the return of the dire wolf as you'll later encounter. Let that TNT burn out and then it's on to the sewers. Level 5 will throw a load of crap at you, so stay on your toes. This is where my review of the game may become a bit more critical, as I feel that level 5 not only throws too much at you, but also not much detail or care went into it either. Now keep in mind, this is my personal opinion, so take that information as you will. Level 5 is not a terrible level, but it throws everything at you that it possibly can without breaking the game. If you're playing 1-player, then you should be just fine. But if you're playing 2-player, well, if you're lucky, the game won't crash. Yes, crash. The game is prone to crashing, but only on rare occasions. Imagine how hurt I was when me and my 2nd player beat level 5, and the game screamed at us. The first thing you'll notice is that perspective is off again. The same detail applied in the other levels before it is not the same here. According to the story, the sewers now flood with blood as the zombies have used the sewers as their dumping ground for the victims, which has turned the already tainted waters to a crimson hue. You can see the water animated throughout the entire level, but you will not advance into the tunnel. Remember when I said at level 2 that it was important to remember that zombies only came out of the center of the screen? Much to the comparison of the hotel level, the same respects are not given here, as zombies will come from the walls as well as the center. This may not be a big deal for some, and even though it's not much of a big deal to me, I still have to acknowledge that the same care should have been applied here as it did in the hotel level, especially considering that the layout is the same. Regardless, the level is a challenge and I can be happy with that. The longer you last, you'll encounter another spider like in the Hotel Hell level, and all you have to do is unload your shotgun once he stops. The problem is, the animation causes screen tearing that the hardware of the Jag can't seem to handle. The game chugs until you can defeat him. Later, you'll also encounter the mutated crab monster, which from there on, the rest of the game is smooth sailing. Beat the sewer level and off to the library, where your only obstacle is your vision. The library level is more of a calmer, less frantic level, and in reality can be beaten easily with grenades and a flamethrower, both of which will light up the room, allowing you to predict where they're coming from. Remember not to waste all of your flamethrower, however, as you will need it in order to beat the true Batlord. Without it, you cannot beat the game. Seriously. Once you reach the Cathedral of the Batlords, you'll notice that the fuse is much shorter now on the TNT, as this level is primarily a training ground with bats. The level lasts only about 2 minutes and is somewhat problematic with 2-player, as 2-player can't shoot the bats unless they're flying directly at you. After you've thrown the TNT, it's time to face the Batlord, which for me was more of a disappointment than a victory. Before I continue, I just want to say that it may seem as if I'm picking it apart and making complaints, but I do like this game a lot. I really do. I spent days playing this game not just because I had plans to review it, but because it is honestly a fun game. There is room for improvement, but that doesn't mean the game sucks. I highly recommend any Jaguar enthusiast to at least give the game a try, as the game itself is playable and can be enjoyed. If you have intentions of buying the game, then please by all means do so. In fact, I would encourage you. You can buy the game Jag Zombies today by going to wave1games.net and ordering your game today with a variety of carts from white, black, or red. But because this is not an advertisement, going back to the Batlord, I feel that the ending was too short and too confusing for the game to be so aggressive. Fun game, displeasing ending. Once the Batlord arrives, you'll notice that he has a less pixelated design than most things in the game, and also lacks animation, following in the same animation as the faux Batlord in the beta for Jag Zombies 1. He doesn't move, he hops, or rather flies around the screen like an annoying mosquito. He spits acid at you, which in all honesty is pretty neat, but it doesn't actually feel compelling. Unload your shotguns for an extended fight, but once he reaches the lower end of the screen, pull out your flamethrower, and just like that, in 10 to 15 seconds, he is defeated. That's it, 10 to 15 seconds. Then on to the climax and closing credits, where we get a look into the minds of the zombies and the faux Batlord, who decide to rise up and challenge the real Batlord to something called the Necro BMP-G2, which had me confused as hell and scratching my head because the story was just so random. I mean, it was just thrown at you like, wait, they can talk? Followed by the other question, what the hell is a Necro BMP-G2? Confused, I inquired to Jeffrey about it, and he announced that all would be explained in Jag Zombies 3, which is coming soon. Also coming to Wave 1 Games are 2 other new games. Finally, we see a new release from his game Sharkbyte and his port of Fishin' Frenzy from the Atari Jag arcade. That's 3 new games coming soon, and I'm looking forward to it as well. If you're still floating around, I'll go ahead and rate some of the games from Wave 1 Games for the future consumers. I personally would stay away from Frogz, Ants, and Thea Realm Fighters unless they were for experimental purposes or collector's purposes. The best 4 games currently available as the making of this video are Fast Food 64, Aircars, Saucer Wars, and of course, Jag Zombies. So what were my experiences with Wave 1 Games? Well, learning about Wave 1 Games has been a journey to say the least, but my encounters with the company have not been unpleasant. Despite the criticism the company and man behind the company gets, I have to say that I am not dissatisfied. I've received a refund without hesitation from a wrong colored cartridge, almost instant response when inquiring about other products. I've received honest answers, fast shipping, quality product, and a handful of decent and wholesome conversations. I have to say that I plan to buy more from Wave 1 Games as a collector, and will also be working on a review for Thea Realm Fighters in the near future. In closing, I think that Jag Zombies 2, although not perfect, has extreme potential. I look forward to playing the 3rd installment, and Jeffrey Johnson and Wave 1 Games, whether you like them or hate them, is here to stay, and with it comes new homebrew games for your Jaguar collection.